Every gilded cage is built with walls of comfort. The only question is what you're paying for them.
You ever get that feeling that the world is just being torn apart at the seams? Well, what if the real blueprint for all that division isn't out there in the world, but it's actually inside our own minds? That's exactly what we're going to dive into.
It's a question a lot of us are asking ourselves, right? There's this constant background noise of tension and division. It feels like it's in everything. And it's more than just people disagreeing. It feels like society itself is fracturing. So what's really going on here?
And you know, it's so easy to point the finger at the usual suspects: politics, social media. And don't get me wrong, they're a huge part of the story. But they're more like the symptom, not the cause. The real answer is much closer to home, and honestly, a lot more unsettling.
That's right. The whole blueprint for all this division is actually built on a foundation that already exists inside every single one of us. To really understand the algorithm that's tearing the world apart, we've got to first look at the code that's already running inside our own heads.
All right, so let's start with the really personal stuff. Let's talk about those intimate mechanisms of control, the little psychological soft spots that make us vulnerable to manipulation, long before any algorithm even enters the picture.
You know, we're always told that empathy is this incredible strength. And it is. But here's the catch. It's also a major vulnerability. It's a string that can be pulled. When our deep-seated need to be a good person starts to override our ability to say no, our kindness gets weaponized. Not to build bridges, but to make sure you fall in line.
Think about this. Have you ever said, "I forgive you," not because you actually felt healed, but just because you were exhausted from the fight? That's not really forgiveness, is it? It's a survival tactic. You're trading your own voice for what feels like peace. And man, is that an effective way to get people to just accept things they know aren't right, just for a moment of quiet?
I mean, just think about it. Who gets praised as mature in our society? It's usually the person who doesn't rock the boat, right? The one who keeps things agreeable. But is that really maturity? Or is it just a fancy word for self-censorship? We're kind of programmed to think being agreeable is a top-tier virtue, when a lot of the time it just makes us way, way easier to manage. And this one cuts deep. We all have this fundamental human need to feel useful, to feel valued, to be needed. But that desire can be twisted. It could be the very thing that keeps you stuck in situations, relationships, or even belief systems that are just slowly sanding you down, all because it feels good to be the one who sticks around, the one who helps.
Okay, so those are the strings inside our own minds, right? Now, let's zoom out a little and see what happens when you plug that into the power of the group. Because once you're primed for compliance as an individual, you become incredibly vulnerable to the pressures of the tribe.
And this gets to a really core conflict we all have to deal with. See, most social groups, they're not built for absolute truth. They're built for cohesion, for sticking together. A group that rewards loyalty above all else, that group will survive. A group that's constantly at war with itself over every little uncomfortable truth, yeah, that's not going to last long. You learn this deep down. It's why we hesitate, why we soften our words. Because loyalty feels safe. Truth can get you kicked out of the club.
So, what's the engine that drives all this? It's this thing called social proof. It's basically your brain's little life hack for making decisions. If everyone else is doing it, it must be the right thing to do. It's why a whole crowd of people will wait at an empty crosswalk until one person steps out and then boom, everyone goes. Your brain just outsourced its decision to the group. You think you're making a rational choice, but really it's just your biology kicking in.
All right, so we've got these little glitches in our own psychology and in how we act in groups. And hey, this is not a new discovery, not by a long shot. For literally centuries, people in power have understood these quirks and have built entire systems to take advantage of them. Let's just take a quick look at how that has evolved. Look, the dream of controlling what people think, that's as old as power itself. Way back in 1928, a guy named Edward Bernays literally wrote the book on it, called Propaganda, where he argued that an elite group had to manipulate the masses. Then in the 50s, you had the CIA's Project MKUltra, which went into some seriously dark territory of mind control. The game is the same, but the tools, they're on a whole other level now. The scale, the precision, it's breathtaking. Which, of course, brings us to today. We've basically taken that age-old ambition for control and built the perfect machine to do it for us, automatically and at a global scale. Okay, this is where it all clicks into place. A classic model for manufacturing consent has been completely supercharged for our digital world. Old-school advertising is now surveillance capitalism.
News editors are now algorithmic curators. But here is the absolute game changer. This new machine doesn't just filter the news, it's actively designed to find the most inflammatory, most divisive stuff out there. Why? Because outrage gets clicks, anger gets engagement. It's a system that fundamentally short-circuits our ability to feel empathy because it profits from our most extreme knee-jerk reactions.
And this is the part we really need to get. See, this whole system isn't just trying to predict what you'll buy. Its real job is to change you. It learns your personal triggers, it learns what makes you angry, and then it feeds you more and more of it. Because that's what makes you more predictable, more profitable, and yeah, ultimately, way more polarized.
Okay, so I know this all sounds pretty grim, but here's the thing. Understanding how the machine works is the first step to breaking free from it. So this final part is all about how we can start to reclaim our own thinking.
And that's the goal, right? Something called cognitive sovereignty. It doesn't mean you have to delete all your apps and go live in a cabin. It just means developing the awareness and the mental tools to think for yourself in an environment that is constantly trying to do the thinking for you. It's about being the one who pulls the strings, not the one being pulled.
So how do we do that? Well, here's a super practical tool you can start using like today. It's called the SIFT method. So next time you're scrolling and a headline makes your blood boil, the first and most important step is just stop. Just pause. Before you react, before you share. Then take 30 seconds to investigate the source. Who is this? Then find other, better coverage of the same topic. And finally, trace the claim back to where it originally came from. It sounds so simple, but that little pause, it's everything. It breaks that cycle of pure emotional reaction and lets your thinking brain catch up.
Which brings us to one final thought. This whole algorithm of division, this whole amplification machine, it only works because it knows how we'll react. It feeds on our outrage, our fear, our blind loyalty. So when you choose to stop, to question, to think, you're not just being a savvy media consumer. You're throwing a wrench in the gears. You're a glitch in the machine. And in this day and age, that might just be the most powerful act of rebellion there is.